there is potential here for a healthy market correction to trigger selling that begets selling that turns into one of these waterfall events that is a major 2008 or maybe even 1929 scale event.
Greetings and welcome to our Wealthion show. My name is Trey Reik, and we're here today with the erudite publisher of the independent speculator, Lobo Tiggre. We've talked to him in the past, most recently in June. Lobo, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
It's good to take time with people worth spending time with.
Very nice. So as I was thinking about our conversation back in June, which I actually went back and watched a bit of, at the top of your mind at the time was the concept of the red pill room, the Trump shock, and the Trump session. So I thought that was all very intriguing at the time, and certainly June seems like about 10 years ago, but how has that all worked out in your mind? Is it still at the top of your mind? It hasn't turned out to be as big of a deal as you thought. It has turned out. Different things have happened. What's an update on that?
Yeah, there's sort of a yes and no answer, which is that famous or infamous now K-shaped economy, which, it started out as sort of like this theoretical thing, but the more data we see, the more real and powerful that seems. The people on the bottom rungs of the economy, even the mainstream cheerleaders are admitting that this is not good. They're struggling. As we speak, there's something about today, the big number making buzz is that people are behind on their utility payments. This isn't optional spending. And I guess having been there myself, if you're struggling, that a utility can't just cut you off the moment you're late. They have to give you a warning. And I've never actually been cut off by a utility, even when I was a starving young artist, right? But I think you have a couple months. They'll warn you you're 2 months behind, you're 3 months behind. Now we really mean it. You need to pay this, right? So there's, it's. You could say it's semi-discretionary, but it's never a good thing. Nobody wants to be behind on their utility bills, and you can't do it indefinitely. So I do think that we are seeing the reality of I'm trying to say this carefully, because if I say the word Trump, even though it has 5 letters, it's like it has 4, and it incenses people, either because I fail to praise Trump enough or because I don't criticize him enough. But whether you love him or hate him, he is trying to transform the U.S. and therefore global economies. My thesis was neither pro nor anti that. I get the arguments either way, but that it's happening and that the consequences would be material and near-term difficult for the economy. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's what the K-shape is telling us. The new news, I guess, as it were now, Trey, really is what's happening to the upper branch. It's been sort of assumed, all this money printing, fiscal dominance, money helicopters, global liquidity, pick your term, depending on your guru. But that all that money was going to prop up the upper end and AI and all this stuff. And we're starting to see, I'm not saying this is it and the markets are about to go over the waterfall here, but it would be responsible to say that can't be what we're looking at. It hasn't fallen apart yet. But you know what? In 2008, when things were starting to roll over, they didn't fall apart in a day either. Things started getting, they were nervous jitters in August. They started getting alarming in September. And then in October, November is when things really went vertical down, as I recall. Doesn't happen in a day. And that was a relatively fast one. So what I'm saying is, the other buzz of the day is AI bubble. People are starting to recognize, even the CEO of Google has started to say that there's a little bit of craziness in, irrational exuberance. I forget what the term was. It wasn't Greenspan's irrational exuberance, but it was something about, some insanity in the AI market. And again, everybody sees this as like the the dot-com thing, sure, there was a crash, but then the internet was a real thing. And everybody kind of brushes off the dot-com crash because now we have Amazon and all these things are real now. Yeah, but the dot-com crash happened and fortunes were wiped out. And nobody knew who was going to come out on the other side. Nobody really could know that Apple would come back from its major fiascos. One of my favorite visualizations of this is if you look at the founding team of Microsoft, it looks like a long-haired Southern, band, like ZZ Top or something with the hair and the beards and stuff. Who the heck would have bet on those guys becoming, what Microsoft became in the end? So what I'm saying is, I think those alarms that I was sounding before are very real to the people on the bottom end, leg of the K. And there are alarms ringing now, suggesting that the top bar of the K might be in trouble. I'm not predicting the market crash tomorrow because, you could have made a good case for that every one of the last 20 years and you would have been right twice out of 20. So I'm not going to do that. But I think having some insurance at this point is prudent. I'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Trey.
What are some of the signs for the top part of the K? I'm intrigued there.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the data points is not just the Google guy, but there's multiple people talking about the AI bubble and, talking heads, the AI bubble. Let me put it this way. I had dinner last night here in Puerto Rico with Adrian Day and Brent Johnson, the Dollar Milkshake guy, both of whom I have great respect for. And I know a lot of gold bugs hate Brent because somehow they think he's anti-gold, though he's not. But anyway, and the main question around the table was, okay, we all know this is an AI bubble. Like nobody disputed that. There was a question first, and there was a new guy too, and I don't want to mention him without permission, but nobody raised their hand to say no, we're not in an AI bubble. And then the question was, okay, so how do we know when it's going to pop? And we didn't have a good answer. Sorry, I can't tell you. Here's the thing. Here's this one little trick to watch for to know when the AI bubble is popping. But the consensus was that, we say pop, but it doesn't disappear overnight, that there will be signs. Like right now, there are, concerns and people saying, well, maybe there's a bubble. That doesn't mean it's going to pop. But when it starts disintegrating, something happens. One of the related companies really disappoints, misses the guidance in a big way, or starts cutting their own guidance, something like that. There will be signs. Like between Bear Stearns and Lehman, right? There were 6 months. Doesn't mean there has to be 6 months this time. But there was a major warning in 2008. And history may not repeat, but our collective experience around that table was maybe 150 years. And no, that's a bit much. 100 years. Let's call it 100 years. And we all thought that there would be clear signs. Like right now, we're maybe a little bit nervous, but when it starts to come apart, there will be clear signs. So what I'm saying for the answer to the K is I think this is a big deal. And the anecdotal evidence I'm throwing in here is some of the smartest people I know. We're all watching this carefully because the top part of the K has been propped up. The horrible market breadth that we've seen, 7 companies holding up most of the valuation of the whole stock market. That's that's sort of the definition of tap dancing on a landmine, skating on thin ice, pick your metaphor. So I think this is a big deal. This is part of what's happening now. The broader market's fluctuating, the trouble that we've seen, around the world, the Chinese struggle that they've had, that it reminds me of Mario Draghi years ago, who's like almost pulling his hair out, please, I'll do everything I can to get inflation. The Chinese have been struggling to get some inflation. They finally got it. Well, be careful what you wish for.
Right. With respect to the AI, I have to throw in that obviously folks in our milieu are obviously watching this, waiting for the clues. To me, the first clue, like the first data point, was the day that Oracle went up 36% in a day on announcement of a $60 billion deal with OpenAI, money they have never earned, to build a data center no one has money for, which will require power,
Yes.
I've read, of 4 nuclear reactors. Now, I don't know which part of that is actually true, but when you start to see events like that in Oracle's come down quite a bit since. In fact, I think it's retraced the entire 36% move. But
you're bringing up something that I think might be where we look towards the sparks heading for the powder keg, and that is this now famous, like, again, even the mainstream is admitting this, the circular financing, the vendor financing within the AI sphere, where the company doesn't have the money, so they go to the vendor. That it's amazing, this daisy chain, which was something that we've seen in previous crashes, right? That was one of the things that we saw. And then so that's an area to look for. But as far as things coming out of left field, like, it might not be that at all, or that might happen like second or third domino. The other thing that's been talked about a lot, and credit where due, it's Jeff Gundlach who's really been banging the drum loudest on this, and that is private credit. We've got private credit and private equity. But private credit, I mean, just the whole idea of it is, massive amounts of money, no transparency to the markets. What could possibly go wrong, right? So
and we had that interesting Monday, I think 2 Mondays ago, where the Morgan Stanley CEO, the Goldman Sachs CEO, and the Cap Guardian, I believe, CEO, all came out at a Hong Kong investment conference and said a 10 to 15% market correction would be healthy. Do you remember that a couple of weeks ago? So, and there have been many people pointing to the private credit. So when we look,
so these are all upper K guys who are sounding alarms. It's not just tinfoil hat Lobo.
From the people who matter, but people.
Yeah, well, that's maybe a little.